Okay, so everything works nice with the load more, but we still need to do a few things. First, we need to create the button, something nicer than the one we have. We have something really simple. So we need to add a button, we need to do that. We need to add the transitions, that's what we're gonna do right now. And then if you notice the final version, we have the name of the team, and then we have the date of the article, we're gonna need to do that as well. But we're gonna leave that one to the end. It's gonna be kind of complicated. You're gonna see why. Okay, so now we're gonna be adding the transitions for this. So we are gonna be using CSS transitions, and this item returns an array of items. So we're gonna be using transitions group for this. So I'm gonna go right here. I'm gonna wrap everything inside transitions group. I'm gonna copy this and paste it inside. Very good. So transitions group is gonna need pretty much two things. It's gonna need the component, which is gonna be a div. In this case, we don't have a UL, we just have a div, and we're gonna pass a class name, and the class name is gonna be list. Okay, let's go. Okay, so that's fine. We should be getting something else right here, but that's fine. So we're gonna get a component and we get a class name of list. This works. So now this transitions group, this render news, whenever we return a template, we're just returning a simple div. So what we need to do, we need to return a CSS transition with the template. So I'm gonna go right here and I'm gonna create a CSS transitions, open and close. And we're going to put everything inside. Now, as you remember, React CSS transitions needs a lot of configuration right here. So the first thing that we're going to need is going to be the class names. Now, the class names are going to be, the animations are going to be only entering. So I'm just going to set the class names only when the item enters. We can do that. So we're going to say class names is going to be equal to an array of values. So it's going to be an object. So it's going to be first the enter, and this one is going to be equal to styles dot, and we're going to create one right now. It's going to be news list and then underscore wrapper. And then we have the other state, which is going to be enter and then active. If you remember, we have the active. So this one is going to be equal to styles dot, and we're going to use the same thing we have on top, but it's going to be underscore enter. That's good. Looks nice. Then we're going to need the timeout. So the timeout is going to be equal to 500. What else? We can have a key, so we can get rid of that error message, and the key is going to be equal to the iteration we have right here on top. It's going to be I. Okay, so now if we reload the application, we don't get any errors, but nothing is going to happen. We need to add the classes and the transitions for this. So I'm going to go back to news lists and .css, and I'm going to be adding the classes right here at the bottom. So what we need to do, pretty much, we need to set up two classes. Whenever the natural state of the wrapper, the news list wrapper, we have right here, this class right here, and then when it's entered. Okay, so it's going to be dot, the news list item, news list, and then underscore wrapper. Let me make some space. And it's going to be equal to box sizing, then it's going to be border box, whatever. Then the opacity is going to be equal to 0. That's the default state of this card. Then we're going to use transform, and it's going to be equal to translate x, and we're going to do it minus 100%. So the item by nature is going to be outside the scope. Good. So I'm going to do this. I'm going to say transition, just like this, and it's going to be all dot half a second, 500 milliseconds, and then it's going to be ease in. Okay. So then the next state is going to be the same thing, news list wrapper, but it's going to be underscore enter, open and close, and it's going to be opacity of 1, and then transform, and we're going to show it. So it's going to be translate X, and it's going to be 0%. So this is the state after the transition is completed. Okay, so I'm going to reload the page, and in theory it should be working. Notice that we saw a transition right there. If I do load more, we get the transition. So, that's working. Okay, that's good. So the transitions are done, and we are not getting an error message. I'm going to remove that console log we have right here because it is a little bit annoying. Okay, so what is next? If I go to the final one, we have a load more news. But if you notice, this button gets repeated. We're going to be using this button. So it would be a good idea to create a reusable component. So that's what we're going to do right now. We're going to create a widget or maybe a place or something, but that it's going to be hosting the actual buttons. Okay. So I'm going to go right here, and I'm going to just start creating this. It's going to be it's going to have the name of button, of course, because it makes sense. And then we're going to pass a bunch of properties. So it's going to be button open and close for now. And sorry, let me make it a self-closing tag because we are bringing a component. So this button needs to have some configuration. First, it's going to be the type of the button. We don't have this component just yet. We're going to create it in a minute. But from the starts, it's going to get the type. So this is going to be a load more type. Okay, I'm making this up. You can name this whatever you want. So this load more is going to have the ability to run a function that loads more. Okay, so I'm going to say load more right here at the bottom, and I'm going to be passing a prop that is going to be equal to the function we have right here at the bottom with the onClick. So now whenever we use this button, this component needs to have a function that calls load more. Okay. If not, of course, nothing is going to happen or it's going to fail. So now this button has some text. So I'm going to go right here at the bottom, and I'm going to put CTA, which is call to action. You can name this whatever you want. It's going to be load more news. Okay. I'm going to delete this. We don't need it. And we need to create the component that is going to be handling this button. So I'm going to go to widgets, and for now, I believe it's a good idea to store it inside widgets because it could be a widget. So I'm going to say buttons just like this, whatever. You can name it whatever you want, and I'm going to create a new file that is going to be called buttons.js. So this button.js, what's going to do, the main nature of this is going to be just returning some JSX, just returning a template. So we're going to use a stateless component. It's going to be import React from React, just like this. It's like we did a million times. We're going to be using link, so I'm going to import and then link from, and then React, then router, and then DOM. Good. We're going to use a style sheet. We don't have it, but I'm going to create it right now. Import styles, and then from, and then we need to create one that is going to be called buttons in just a second. Okay, so first we need to create this button. So we could call this whatever we want. It could be called buttons or whatever. So I'm going to say buttons, and it's going to be equal to, and we're going to be passing some props. Remember that we receive a props from the other component, from the parent component, and this one is going to be equal to whatever. For now, I'm just going to return, a div, whatever. Doesn't matter, just to make sure that we are getting something. Hey. So now we need to do the export. So it's going to be export default, and buttons, whatever. We need to create the CSS so we can skip that error message. So it's going to be buttons.css. And right here at the top, I made a mistake. It's going to be .css. Okay, so button is not defined. Let's go back. And I need to import this. So it's going to be import button from ... and we're going to need to bring it from buttons / and then buttons. Good. So right now this buttons is just returning the hey, a div with a hey. We are going to be changing this in a minute. So we are passing 3 different values. If you go back to buttons, the main nature of this component is going to be returning just a template. So again, I'm going to go right here, I'm going to say let and then template, just like we did before. It's most of the times it's always the same idea. So for now, I'm going to delete this, and we're going to be using again a switch, and we're going to be adding more buttons in the future. Now, if you remember, whenever we call this button, we are passing a type. So we're going to be evaluating the type right here. So it's going to be props.type, and then we're going to start checking different cases. The first case is going to be load more, is the one that we have right now, load more. And this one is going to be returning a template. For now, we're going to set it to null, and then we do break. Then we need to set a default case that is going to be returning, again, a template of null, just like we did before. And then at the end, at the very end, we need to return the actual template. So we're going to say return template. Okay, that is good. You know, it's working. We are not getting an error message, just warnings. So this load more is going to be returning some JSX. So I'm going to delete this. I'm going to create this JSX. It's going to be just a div. I'm going to be adding a class name that is going to be styles and whatever, blue button. Now this load more needs to have a non-click listener. If we remember, we are passing a prop of load more, and whenever we do a non-click, we need to trigger this load more that we are passing as props. So if I go right here, I'm going to say that whenever we do a non-click on this element, we want to run whatever we have inside props and load more, just like that, load more. Let me just double check. Yeah, capital M, that's good. So what else? We need to pass the CTA. Right here we have the load more news. So I'm going to be grabbing that. It's going to be props.cta. Okay, and we get load more news. In theory, if I click this, we get more news. So it is working. The only thing that we need to do right now is to add the styling for this. So I'm going to go to buttons, and I'm going to be adding the styles. So it's going to be real simple. For now, it's just going to be one button. So it's going to be blue BTN, open and close. And we can have a few styles. It's going to be text align. It's going to be center. We're going to have a background of blue. And the blue color is going to be 2196F3, something like that. Yeah, it could. So we're going to have a border bottom. So it's going to be border, then bottom. And again, you can put whatever styles you want. Solid, and we're going to have kind of a white-ish color. Good. We're going to change the font weight. So it's going to be font weight. It's going to be a little bit bigger, 500. It's going to be an actual link. So we're going to say display and then block. Well, it's not a link really. It's a div. So we don't need the display block now that I think about it. We don't need the text decoration. We need to change the color, and the color is going to be equal to EE and the same thing. Good. Padding, we need the padding, and the padding is going to be 9 pixels. What else? Cursor, and the cursor is going to be pointer, and font size. Let's set the font size is going to be equal to, I don't know, 15 pixels. Sounds right. So if we reload the application, you know, we get the load more, just like the other one. And if I click it, we get more news and we get the animation. All right, so everything works like it's supposed to. The only thing that we have left is the themes. Right here we have the themes and we have the date. Now the problem is, let's go back to news list. Right here, whenever we return the template, right here at the top, right here we should have the themes, you know, in this case Cavaliers or Knicks or whatever. Right here, this data, it's inside the dv.json. If you go to the dv.json, each article has a team. Let's see, team. Now the thing is that for each team we have an ID. We don't have the name of the actual team. So what we need to do, we will need to do a new fetch. We need to do a new request for the teams database that we have at the bottom. If we scroll down, let me check right here. We have teams, and we have a list of teams of the NBA. So we need to fetch the whole teams of the NBA and match the one that the article has. And we're going to be using, again, we're going to be using a reusable component. And if you ask why, it's because if you notice, we have the same component, the name of the team and the date, inside the cart, inside news. And then for videos, we use the same thing. And if we go inside videos, for example, the main page, we get the same component. So it would be a good idea to create a reusable component so we can just use it once. Okay, that's good. Let's go to the next section and start creating this component.